So, Matt and Mike, if you can do me a favor, just wave and say hello to everybody.
Howdy.
Howdy.
Okay, wonderful. So, I want to welcome you to the Enthusiastic Whiskey Hobbyist interviews. I started these after Whiskey Week in Chicago was shut down this year. All right, I've been going to World of Whiskeys for about 20 years. I put a group together. You mentioned Binny's before. Brett Pontani from Binny's is a friend of mine. He actually introduced me to your rye. Okay, he's the
Very
person
cool.
who told me about your rye. We'll be interviewing Brett in August, actually. So we're doing this about every 2 weeks. And the reason I did this is because we all just need more of an outlet for social interaction. I love whiskey. My friends love whiskey. And there's a lot that we can learn from people like you. So first, I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight and for making the time. And I'm going to ask you both the first question that I ask everybody who joins us, which is, what are you drinking tonight and why?
Go for it, Matt.
Well, I'm actually double fisting at the moment. I've got the hazy IPA with the Eagle Rare sidecar.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, actually, the IPAs are great on hot days.
Yes.
So that's
so.
one. Yeah. Now, what about you, Mike?
Matt, you didn't say why, though.
Oh, that's right. You didn't say why.
Because they're both delicious.
There you go.
Oh, that's a darn good reason.
I'm drinking, Matt, actually, I just found some of these bottles of the barrel proof MGP bourbon finished in Madeira.
Oh, yeah.
That we released years ago.
Yep.
Actually, no, I'm glad that you mentioned it. So tell me, why is it that you're drinking that one, Mike?
Because I don't have like a display shelf. I just kind of have bottles stashed everywhere in the house. And occasionally it's like finding an Easter egg, you know, like open up a cabinet, you look behind something and, oh, cool. There's a bottle I haven't seen for a while. So I just found this one the other day deep in a cabinet. And I was like, yeah, let's give that a shot.
I like it. So that actually almost makes me jump ahead to something that I was going to ask you later. As a relatively new distillery, obviously when you started off, there was the issue that you were sourcing from other places, and now you're making your own juice. Can you talk a little bit about the process and then sort of the shift from sourcing, how you selected what you were going to bottle, and then what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think we kind of looked at it, you know, from the point of view of we had a couple of options. It's either make our own stuff right off the bat and put it in small barrels and age it really quickly. And we didn't really like that option. We never really had any small barrel whiskey that we were really into, and we wanted to be a little more traditional. So we didn't plan on it from the beginning. We naively thought that vodka and gin were going to pay the bills for, you know, the first 3 to 4 years. And that was just us being dumb, ultimately.
Yeah, oddly enough, we had zero intentions of doing a sourced whiskey. It just was something that just kind of happened. It was not part of our business plan. And
we didn't seek it out. I mean, it fell in our lap, kind of, and we were like, we never wanted to do this, but if we're going to do it, let's be, you know, over the top transparent about it. And, you know, that's why we had the Nodder bourbon brand.
I love that name. Just for everybody in what he's talking about here, they've actually had a bottle called Nodder, Knotter, because that was not our bourbon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not our bourbon. And the nice thing is we were able to not only kind of build the brand that way, but honestly, it was really good because we were able to really fine-tune our skills when it comes to blending and small batch.
It could take your time.
Barrel selection, yeah. So, you know, if we had our own stuff out on day one, we didn't really have any experience blending. With the MGP stuff, I mean, we had a good 4 to 5 years of really learning and deep diving into how to do barrel selection, how to do these small batch blends, and it's been great, honestly.
Right, and obviously that's what they do.
it also allowed us to, I mean, the one thing that did stay the same from when Mike and I decided to do this is we were adamant that, you know, we were going to do this our way and do, you know, big age in big barrels and do a long age time. We didn't want to rush anything out. You know, a lot of distillers do that, and, you know, everyone teach their own. There's no right or wrong way to do it. The way we felt was right for us was big barrels, long age time. And the nice thing with having the source product out is that bought us a little more time to, you know, really be able to let the barrels sit. And, you know, we weren't in that position where we needed to take them out a little younger than we wanted. You know what I mean?
Which is good, because we couldn't take them out younger, because from day one, we chose a yeast that was very congener heavy, very ester heavy. We always made our distillation cuts wider and really kind of force ourselves to have a product that we would age for at least 4 to 5 years. So it's a good thing, because honestly, our bourbon at 2 years old in the barrel, at 3 years old, it sucks. Like, it really needs more time, and that's how that's by design. You know, MGP makes amazing stuff that tastes great on day one, but they have a bunch of wizards who work there. So,
well, I mean, I mean, it's funny. I was actually at a tasting of Redemption, you know, and it was a really good tasting. They had their high rye there, they had the bourbon, had the rye, and the very first thing actually that their master distiller talked about was that they source from MGP, and he was talking about how great it is and how he likes working with them. But you said something interesting here, that you actually were starting off with gin and vodka. Really? That's how you were planning to start off here?
Well, we started
naive.
Yeah, we start, and what Mike means is we started distilling whiskey right off the bat. So
yeah, whiskey was always our plan.
Okay, so whiskey.
That's the entire reason we started the distillery was whiskey. I mean, that's the reason we started it, and that'll always be, you know, the main focal point of our distillery. But you know, what Mike was getting at was that we started distilling different types of whiskey, and then, you know, barreling that, and then putting vodka and gin on the shelves, just because we knew we were opening up a distillery in a kind of a touristy town, tourist destination, and we needed something on the shelves. We always knew we were going to, you know, do some vodka and gin and things. And
well, they're, you know, quicker and easier to produce.
Not necessarily.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have a sellable product, right? You'll have a sellable product much more quickly. So that's what. You know.
Sure. But we've taken, you know, we have taken quite a bit of attention to our vodka and our gin and our oak barrel gin and the different things we make. You know, it wasn't just let's get a vodka on the shelf, let's get a gin on the shelf. Those are still things that Mike and I really dove into to do it the way we wanted to do it.
Got it. So where do you get your grain from?
We get all the grain, the bourbon, the corn, the rye. We get all that from a single farm that's about an hour away, a little bit southwest of Rockford.
Okay, Illinois.
Yep. Oh, yeah. So we get the malted barley up in Wisconsin, and when we do we have laid down a bunch of Scottish style malt whiskey, and we typically import malted barley from the UK for that. But it is important for us. We know it's become kind of a cliche thing for small distilleries to say, you know, local grains are better and blah, blah, blah.
If it's good, it's good.
Yeah, we don't. And the thing is, we don't think it's better or worse. We think it's different. And we want to be, how do you say, unapologetically Illinois whiskey. You know, there are a lot of big distilleries in Kentucky that bring in rye from Europe, and that's fine.
Right.
Maybe they get a good deal on it. Maybe it's better, you know, flavor profile wise. We want ours to be very Illinois centric. So, you know, we want the grain to be local. We want it to be aged in the local climate, and, you know, we're not trying to replicate what they do in Kentucky or Tennessee or Indiana.
Right. So let me ask you both a question about your aging process. So this is a straight rye. Straight rye is at least 2 years. Are you aging things now for a longer term? Are you planning on doing something bottled in bond, you know, 7 years, things like that?
The first bourbon, no, second, the second bourbon batch we released was technically bottled in bond. We're just really thrifty, and we didn't really want to pay to get labels made for it to say that, as that's not really our goal, is to do bottled in bond. You'll notice that bottle doesn't have an age statement on it. So if it's straight without an age statement, that means at least 4 years old.
Okay.
But everything bourbon and rye is a minimum of 4. And I'd say the past 2 batches of each, we've been blending 4 or 5 and 6 year old barrels in there.
Got it.
As far as whether or not we're going to try and, up the age statement, absolutely, as we're able to, but we're more concerned with creating a consistent and complex blend. So it'll be nice someday if we could blend 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old barrels together.
What's the favorite thing? I'm actually going to ask this to Matt first. So Matt, what's the favorite thing that you all ever have produced from your distillery?
Definitely, I think the thing we're most proud of would be the bourbon, the straight bourbon and the straight rye that you have there in front of you. Getting into this business to make whiskey, to do it our way, to do it the hard way. When those bottles finally, we were able to, empty those barrels out and put that product out. That's what we spent, years and blood, sweat, and tears after, and trying to sell more vodka to help fund whiskey production, and trying to sell more gin to, buy more barrels and things like that. So when that, those 2 products came out, and I think Mike would probably say the same thing. It was pretty awesome to have them out, and not just that, but also to have them be so well received. We were proud of it, and we liked it, and that's kind of how we do things. But we were thrilled that it's so well received, and people dug what they could dig what we're doing and appreciate kind of our background. And I always say that we got into this business from a very pure and honest place. We were whiskey nerds. We were way into Scotch before we were into bourbon, but we had bottles, and we were trading bottles all the time, and that's where we got into this from. It wasn't let's go open a distillery and make a few bucks, because really it's just open a distillery and spend a few bucks.
So what's your favorite Scotch?
Mike is Springbank all day long.
I love Springbank. Springbank's my favorite. Love Springbank.
I don't know if I could say my favorite Scotch, but I do gravitate towards the Balvenie and Dalwhinnie. I love stuff out of that distillery.
When you look at their whole portfolio, Balvenie is fantastic.
Balvenie's one of them that I first got into, and really kind of goes into the different iterations of it. So that's always kind of holds a special place in my heart.
Eric, what were you holding up there?
Oh, I was holding up the Caribbean rum cask.
Oh yeah, that's great stuff. Yeah, that's delicious. So
right up there.
Yep. great, Mike. I
might have to have that one next.
So, Mike, I'm going to throw the same question back at you, which is, what's the favorite spirit that you have produced for you?
Oh, it's that's tough. I'm Matt would agree with this. It's kind of like picking your favorite child. We have products that we produce a lot of because they're more, higher sales. And then we have products that are kind of our guilty pleasures, like the rum and all of that. At the end of the day, the bourbon, that's really what our initial ambition was, to, make a good bourbon. But at the same time, our other kids are fantastic as well. We really like the rye, the rum that we've been working on. Really excited to release that. But the nice thing with it all is, the bourbon and the rye that everybody is tasting today was kind of our first stab at it, and we're constantly, we're into research papers, we're into trial and error, we're into learning, and we're really excited to see what comes from the barrels, a couple years down the road as well, because of all the little tweaks that we've been making. So
what's funny is that I was recently at Warehouse Liquors, okay, which is you're probably familiar with Warehouse Liquors. It's in the South Loop of
Yep.
Chicago. They were recently in the press a lot. You probably saw the video where Gene
Saw
got
that.
beat up. Okay,
Yep.
so
Yeah.
I made a point to get down there and buy something recently, and when I was there, I saw a whole shelf of relatively newer bottles from Single Cask Nation. Again, Joshua Hatton and Jason Johnston Yellen. And I actually sent a message. It's so funny what you just said. I sent a message to Joshua Hatton. I said, "What's better, your Glenn Taucher's 8 or your Altmore 8?" And his response, direct quote, "You're asking me to pick a child."
There you go.
Right.
It's true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I said, I'm at Warehouse, throw me a bone here. And he said, well, he prefers bourbon aged whiskeys. So he told me to go with the Altmar, but again, it's like picking a child. So I totally get
Yep.
that. I'd like you guys to tell me a little bit about Galena Whiskey Weekend. Okay, and actually, and one of the reasons why I ask you that is because when we are finally off of this nightmare of a lockdown, one of my little side goals is to organize a few tours in the Midwest of going to different distilleries. And I was going to go to Galena Whiskey Weekend this year, but I was too busy, couldn't make it. Tell me a little bit about it, please.
It's really, it comes down to, everybody, being, quote unquote bourbon nerds prior to this distillery. Mike and I had always gone to, Whiskey Week in Chicago and World Whiskey and, Whiskey Live. And we were always, anything whiskey, Mike and I would go. Once we opened the distillery, that continued. And unfortunately, then we got on the other side of the table. But, we any spirits event we go to, we do have a lot of tasting events and things that we have employees that handle. But if there's a whiskey tasting event with a bunch of different whiskeys, Mike and I always go to it. We usually bring extra employees so that we can sneak away from the table and go try stuff. So, that's something we like. And Galena has had traditionally an event called Wine Lovers Weekend in Galena.
Okay.
With 3 different business owners in town had started that years and years and years ago. And a lot of people come to town for it. So, after a few years here, Mike and I had started talking about, we should do like some sort of whiskey weekend here, bring a lot of people in, kind of similar to that. And we had been approached by a couple other business owners about wanting to do something similar. And Mike and I had already started talking about it. And then we ended up talking to the 3 business owners that were behind the Wine Lovers Weekend.
Okay.
The beautiful part is they had all the infrastructure down,
right.
into, getting the tables and getting the
yeah, they know how to do it. Yeah.
How to
Why
do it.
rebuild the wheel? Right.
Yeah. So basically it was a perfect marriage of them having the system down and in place. And then Mike and I having the whiskey knowledge, because these were wine people and they didn't, know a lot about the world of whiskey in general.
Right.
So it was kind of Mike and I that kind of, fine tuned, what kind of whiskeys do we want to have at this event? What don't we want to have at this event? And
yeah, they had some
it's
weird ideas.
It's a whole weekend, right?
On.
It's a whole weekend, right?
Yeah, 2 days.
Wow. Yeah. And so you're bringing in I assume you're bringing in both American whiskeys, but also whiskeys of from other parts of the world too, right?
Correct.
Absolutely.
So it's like your own version of World of Whiskeys, but it's out in Galena.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
kind of.
wonderful.
And it's, we have a great partnership with, there's a liquor store owner, Tim Althouse from Family Beer and Liquor. He's got great relationships with a lot of the different distilleries and their reps. And one of the neat things about Galena Whiskey Weekend is, as an organization, we buy a whole bunch of, really the sought after bottles, all the BTAC bottles, for the first couple of years, you could, with your ticket, you got a pour of Pappy Van Winkle, with different ages. And that was a big thing. People, really had a good time with that. But it's probably the only whiskey event that during the entire stay of it, you can have William LaRue Weller or
Stag or whatever.
Stag.
I mean, you can just go up to the table that's there.
Yeah, you can get as many Stag pours as you want, or Old Fitz, the birthday bottle. There are a bunch of these really, Four Roses bottles, things that a lot of these people are never going to be able to try because
Right,
you know
right.
you have to be pretty lucky to get your hands on some of these bottles. And so for the one price tag, people can go there and try virtually amazing bourbons that they're not going to be able to try. And that's been the allure of it. A lot of people, you know, are really excited about coming back the next year because we have a lot of those hard to get bottles and they're there on the table.
Well, it sounds like, again, the kind of event that a whiskey geek would like, and you guys are whiskey geeks, so that's why I like doing it. You know, I actually got, last year I had to get my Illinois Bassett license that allows me to pour because I frequently help with a few other people who are on here. We host for a homeless shelter, we host their craft whiskey table at their major fundraiser every year. And one year we actually had, you know, Blaum brothers at the table. We had a few others as well. And
Nice.
as a result of getting the Bassett license, I'm sure you know Martin Duffy.
Oh yeah,
okay.
Marty.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
Marty.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
we all have Marty stories, but Marty, you mentioned Whiskey Live. Marty hooked me up with the people from Whiskey Live this year, and I actually staffed it this year in their exclusive tasting room. And it was a blast. You know, I had a great time. You know, it was good stuff. What I'd like to do now, though, just and I have a bunch of other questions, but I'm going to be quiet for a minute because we have a bunch of people on here, and others might want to ask you guys some questions. Eric, if you can do me a favor, and again, we've had other people join on. Remind everybody again the issue with the muting and unmuting.
Yeah, so Zoom, I cannot unmute you, unlike before. So if you have questions, either message me or I'll switch to gallery view and raise your hand, and then I'll call on you and you'll have to unmute yourself. So I know Michael Bloom had one question first.
Right, and so does Todd Coe. Todd Coe also has a question.
Okay, so before we started recording and before everybody had joined, Mike had talked about how you regularly pursue passion projects at your distillery, and you make stuff for yourself that you know you'll like. And I was wondering, sometimes people we talk to say, you know, ultimately what comes out of distilleries is all economics. So I was actually wondering, when you're brothers and you're doing passion projects, how much economics play a part in those? And whether Blaum Brothers or the two of you consider flavor first or actually enforce a fiscal discipline on yourself when you're doing those.
I think most business owners would say one thing but really mean another. No, no, maybe we're bad business owners, honestly, but we never sacrifice. And honestly, this isn't marketing fluff. We make everything the way we want to with quality ingredients, and then we price it accordingly. We don't do it the other way around. And never will. You know, we live in a tourist town.
Yeah, I'm pissed.
Is vodka part of that passion? Is
No.
it neutral passion, considered that it's a neutral grain spirit? Or
No, honestly, the thing is, this shows how we're not good at marketing things we don't care about. You know, we have people come in, they're like, oh, I love your vodka, it's great. And
Like, cool.
we'll typically be like, I'm glad you like it. It sucks to make. We're not into it. I mean, that's pretty, when you say that's pretty honest with how we react.
Yeah.
What about the gin? Talk about the gin though, because that's different.
The gin one, yeah, and Mike, yeah, we are honest to a fault, maybe, with things, and you know, I mean, at the end of the, I don't know, vodka's vodka. I've never gotten into that. We do have one vodka, Hellfire vodka, where we cut up fresh jalapenos, habaneros, and peppercorn and soak that in the vodka, so it makes an awesome Bloody Mary. That one we're pretty fond of. It's a pretty neat spirit. It tastes like a liquid jalapeno. We don't do chemical flavorings, which again would save us a lot of money if we did, but we cut up all the peppers by hand and soak it.
Nice.
And I would actually argue that that's kind of a gin in many ways. Maybe the technical difference is that you're not using a gin basket to make it, but
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Well,
And
the
I mean,
fact that there's no juniper
And if
is
there's
the
no
real
juniper, yeah.
reason. Yeah.
but
You're
I
really
find juniper
geeking out, Paul. I
overrated.
got to tell you,
Sorry.
you're really geeking out here, Paul.
I'm muting.
but the
So,
gin,
Matt, yeah, tell us about the
to
gin.
your
Tell us about
question,
your gin. Yeah.
yeah, we honestly,
We are
before
proud of that.
yeah, we've always been really proud of our gin. We originally, while we were getting the distillery set up, we were waiting on our still to come in, and Mike and I were both already all in on this, and we're like, geeking out, wanting to get going. So Michigan State University had a research distillery on campus, and they were doing a bunch of professors, they were writing papers and stuff and doing distillation. So we actually rented out one of their stills for a couple of weeks, I think 3 weeks. So we went up there and did some distilling. And one of the things we did, we knew we wanted to make a really good gin. And we kind of knew what we liked, what we didn't like, even though we both like very different, we both like the same styles of gins, but we're both all over the board with, the different styles. So we knew that, you had to have juniper, and then it could be, thousands of different botanicals you can use. So we ultimately reverse engineered gin, and we made on these stills at Michigan State, we made a bunch of one botanical gins, kind of. So it was just gin fractions. And we made them, and then we sat for about a week and with a pint glass, and we would use a pipette and put certain amounts of each of these fractions in, and then we'd rule them out. We did it with I think we ended up distilling about 20, 25 fractions of different botanicals. So then we got to this mix that we thought was amazing. We finally hit it on the head, and we said, this is what we're after. And it was orange peel, juniper berries, coriander, fennel, and orris root.
Nice.
So we had it in a very precise measurements. And so ultimately we found what we liked. We had a few bottles of it that we had mixed together. And we went back, to the distillery, and fast forward, a little time, our stills set up, and we had these bottles, and Mike and I would sit and sip them. We said, "God, this is the best gin ever. It's fantastic." So we took those measurements and those ratios, and we multiplied them to make a bigger batch on our still. When we did that, it wasn't, all single fractions. We put them all in together. What came out was a very, very good gin. It was great gin, but it wasn't the same as what we had done when we did them all single fractions. So you're probably starting to see a theme here now, even though it would have been, much more cost effective for us to continue down that path. To date, we still do each of our 5 gin fractions distillation separately. So we distill 5 separate fractions. Then after they're distilled, we marry them together at the end.
And one of the important reasons for that is you could get a batch of juniper berries one season that's different, and you can't always assume each of your botanicals is going to be the same potency as before. So again, most people probably wouldn't notice if we just did the same amounts every time, but we're just
but you would.
picky.
But you would, right?
We would.
And by the way, we got a question here. Are your gins and vodkas available at Binny's in Chicago?
Yes, I know that our brown spirits are at virtually every Binny's.
Right,
I think
right.
3/4 of the Binny's have our vodka and gins. I think there's some stores that don't. So best thing to do is just go to the Binny's website, type in Blaum in the search, pick the product, and then look at the store locator. And
Right.
how many bottles each store has, as you are all pretty probably aware.
Yep.
Right. One thing that's interesting is that one thing I love about Binny's is how they handle what goes on the shelves. Years ago, about 10 years ago, I don't know if you remember this or not, but Oban 14, there was a shortage of Oban 14, which, it's a staple at many bars. A lot of people had it. And it was the bottle that I used to own. I used to always have a bottle of Oban 14 on my shelf. And a bartender told me that they were running out of it. And I was, surprised. So I went onto the Binny's website. Wasn't there. So I called Pantani. I called up Brett, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And he said, "It's in the stores." And I said, "Well, why isn't it on your website?" And he said, "Well, there's such a shortage and so many bars want it. We want to keep it available for our walk-in core customer." And I thought, okay, that's a retailer who treats his customers well. He knows who, he doesn't want a big, steakhouse to come in and buy all the bottles that they have of Oban 14. You know, it was a
Right.
really nice idea. I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
Are there?
Brett, what do you-
Yeah, it was good. So let's see. Are there any other questions here? I have a few others that I can ask, but I want to see if anybody else from the crowd is raising his or her hand. Has any other
Matt and
questions?
Mike, I got a question for you. Have you worked with any independent bottlers?
We've been approached by some. You
Yeah.
mean as far as people buying our barrels to bottle?
Exactly. Yeah. No. Exactly.
So we've been approached by a couple, and none of it's come to fruition yet. Although I can't say who it is, but we're part of one project now where a well-known former master distiller, well, not former, but retired, is putting together blends of whiskeys from big whiskey producers and small craft places like us. So we're hoping to be able to announce that pretty soon.
It's going to
Pretty
be
excited.
pretty cool. It's going to be real exciting.
You know, it's funny. We've had a few people on here, like we've had Bill Welter, you know, from Journeyman. We've had Paul Letgo from Few. You know, and it's nice to hear them talk about their collaborations. You know, it's
terrible guys. Terrible guys.
yeah, jerks, total jerks. I am going to ask you a question now, just on a little bit more of a serious note before we finish up here. What's it been like to operate a distillery and have employees during this ridiculous time of the pandemic and the shutdowns and the different messages we get from our regulators at different levels of government? What's it been like as business owners?
It's been an absolute nightmare, and I know that everybody would expect that answer. It's been a nightmare for everybody, right? Fair.
Right.
But yes, as employers, you know, we really pride ourselves. Mike and I sometimes talk about how even with some of our employees, you know, we just talked about this the other day, how I said, yeah, sometimes I need to remember that they're not just our friends, you know, that work for us. They're, you know, because we treat everybody like family. That's
Right.
That's what Mike and I love about our distillery. Everybody, we all have lunch together every day. Nobody goes and sits and has their sandwich off somewhere else. We do everything together, and it's our family. And you know, I just was joking with Mike the other day, talking, you know, about a place. I need to remember that I'm their boss, and we need to act more like a boss and less like a friend sometimes with some things, you know. So it's been difficult in that regard during this thing because, you know, we weren't able to have our tasting room open, so our bar staff wasn't able to work as much. You know, we tried to find as much as we could. We don't have a big automated bottling machine and bottling line. We have, it's old Laverne and Shirley style almost. We have a assembly line of about 7 or 8 employees. You know, that includes our production staff.
Oh, they had a conveyor belt though. We don't even have
without
that.
the conveyor belt and the glove on the bottle. But
Yeah.
you know, even our tour guides come in and we bottle all our products by hand. You know, it's just pass it down the line and do your part. So we tried to find as much as we could. You know, we have a full-time sales manager in Chicago. We're happy to say we didn't lay anybody off. We were able to keep everybody employed during this whole thing.
Barely.
Barely.
Yeah.
It was obviously tough, and it still is tough.
But that was important to us because we'd rather hire nobody than the wrong person. So
Right.
we
Right.
really invest a lot, you know, into everybody that we employ.
And-
So
No, you want to, you
it
know, you
was
have to build the
important to
right
us
team.
not- yeah,
Right. You need to
absolutely.
build the right team. Have you started having any more tours or tastings again now that we've opened up a little bit more in Illinois? Like what stage are you personally in at the distillery?
So obviously, you know, during the course of this, when everything was on lockdown, we ended up being deemed essential because we started making hand sanitizer. So
Amen to that.
Yeah, we made hand sanitizer, and we ended up, I think, when all's said and done, as we're sitting here right now, we have ended up making and giving away over 1,000 gallons. We
Nice.
never sold any of it. We donated it all. So just over 1,000 gallons as we're sitting here today. But the nice thing is that allowed us to be deemed essential. So we were able to continue our production in the distillery. And we were able to, with people coming in to pick up hand sanitizer, we were able to have our retail shop open. So
Nice.
You know, we were able to kind of keep some people employed. Now we're obviously in the next phase. We're in phase 4 in Illinois, and we're able to open up. So our tasting room usually on a good Saturday, you know, about 100 people is about what can be in there. Right now it's 50. We're operating at half of that, 50 people. Even that we're finding is a little tense, so we've kind of dialed it back a little bit. We used to cap all our tours at 40 people. So a lot of times we'd have, you know, 50, 60, 70 people in our tasting room, and all of a sudden a tour would get out, you'd have another 40 right there. So
walking right by each other, talking, you know, hitting it, bumping into each other.
We cut that down to 20 people. And so the tours are maxed at 20 right now, and we've kind of added some more tours to space that out so people can come in at an earlier time if the afternoon ones get sold out. But it's almost a catch-22 now, and I'm sure you'll agree that we needed to stop the bleeding. You know, we needed people to come back in. We need to serve cocktails again. We need people to come in and buy product. And like a lot of other businesses, we need that. We were happy to do it. You know, we're taking all the precautions. Everybody's masked. Everything's the right way. But all it's going to take is one person to come in. I mean, now, you know, before we didn't have people all over the distillery. Now we've got people all over the distillery on the weekends. So that's what I'm saying. It's kind of a catch-22 because we're happy to have everyone in, but you know, how is the state not going to go back to phase 3 before you know it? Because it's just now everyone's just all over the place, you know?
And again, this is the kind of thing that's, you know, it's not any of our specialties. All we know is that we have to live with it. And it's good that you as business owners were able to maintain operations and maintain employment for others, you know, with those people. So out of respect for your time, we're now pretty much at our time limit. So what I'd like to do right now is if everybody could unmute, if everybody can unmute, please. I know that you have to do that yourselves now. It used to be that Eric would do that for you. And
it's dangerous.
Yeah, I know, it's a little dangerous now. So if everybody can unmute, pour yourself a little bit more if your glass is empty. And
but I'm not opening this. Whoopsie, you can't.
We can't see it. We can't see it.
It's a
Put it in front of you.
Make 18.
Very nice.
I picked it up in Scotland.
So if everybody can please raise a glass and cheers to our guests, the Blaum brothers. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
And as always, until we can all see each other in person, and believe me, I look forward to coming out to Galena and visiting your place. It will happen, I promise you, probably with some of the people who are on this call right now. And again, thank you all very much. We appreciate it.
Okay, so
thank you. We look
Gil,
forward to
thank
hosting
you. Gil, thank you.
Tuesday the 11th.
Thank you, Michael.
Cheers.
Thank you.
And 7:30 again?
Cheers.
Cheers.
7:30 it is.
Yeah.
Hey, Eric.
And you guys want to try to read that book?
Absolutely reading that book.
All right. Okay.